I've been giving that whole fresh and fit thing some thought. And it's not even really about fresh and fit. It really is about um, foreign black men that talk a lot of shit. And they got their own self hatred issues that rarely get discussed. Um, I remember one time I had this Indian guy. We had gotten pretty close, and he decided to tell me about all his sort of sexual fantasies and stuff. Just talking about women and whatnot. And what he really wanted is he wanted a white woman. It's just something he never had. This was a Canadian guy. But, you know, I guess stereotypically or reputation wise, Indian men don't have a lot of success with Western white women. So he was kind of, and I got the vibes, and I already know about a lot of Indians. You know what I mean? They're anti-dark skin. They think that they're superior to black people. You know what I mean? But for whatever reason, he got comfortable and told me that that's what his fantasy was. And what I noticed, and what I picked up on, is how over the years I've seen these Indians that were perplexed about how African Americans or men are able to get white women. You know what I mean? Like, we're not even thinking about competing with these guys on some who can get a white woman level. But they're technically speaking competing with African Americans. And I think it has to do with, and I like how Kat put it, because I ran these ideas past him before I decided to make a video. But he's like, yeah, when they come here, or what they see in the media, African Americans are the lowest of the low. And then they see, white women who are the highest of the high getting with black men, and it throws them off. They go to the mall, they see them with a black man, it completely throws them off, right? So, their attitude is like, well, I'm better than them, and if they can get a white woman, I should be able to get a white woman. And there's a lot of Africans and Caribbean blacks that think the same way. They have a superiority complex when it comes to comparing themselves to African American men, because they're told. I mean, I've had black people, foreign black people even tell me that when it comes to, like, when they go through customs, stay away from those African Americans. I remember I had a guy leave a comment talking about that years ago. Stay away from those African Americans. But even like when it came to like Fresh and Fit, and I want to talk specifically about Fresh and Fit. Even when it came to Fresh and Fit, one of the things that just kind of didn't make sense to me is, I'm like, you have a population of women that you can go to. You have a home base. That's how I look at foreigners. You talk to a Pakistani, Indian guy, Asian guy, if they get sick and tired of Western women, they're like, man, I'm going back home and I'm going to get me one of these village bitches. They always talk that. So when Fresh and Fit went up there talking about the Night Rider and how they're not into black women, and they're talking about, they're ratchet and ghetto and everything else, clearly they weren't talking about their own women. It's not like Sudanese women got a reputation of being ratchet. But they didn't specify. It's another thing I don't like, when somehow foreign black men say disparaging things about black women or women in general. Somehow that falls in the lap of African American men. But let some, foreign black person go off and achieve something, come up with some Nobel Peace Prize or something, that doesn't fall on us. Only the negative and disparaging things that they do. Right. But the other thing that doesn't make sense about it is, if they think that they're superior to, black women, American black women, then they were never an option on the table to begin with. And you see this with a lot of foreign blacks. Like, they don't, how many of them marry African American women? I'd argue that it rarely happens. Even when it comes to these guys going off and messing with white women, it's like, again, going back to that Eldridge Cleaver statement, like white women to them are symbols of freedom. White women to them are symbols of, how much of I got a white woman, I'm an American now. And I think that's the part of the awkwardness of a lot of foreign blacks when they come to America. They're trying to Americanize themselves. And then you get the guys that are kind of stuck in between. They got immigrant parents, they got heavy ass accents, but then they're trying to be, African American. You see this quite a bit with Haitians. That the parents, they speak French or don't speak any English, and then the kids, a lot of them, they are, ingratiated with African American culture. They understand the both worlds, but they gravitate more towards the African American culture because they're in America. They're operating in America. But I think for a lot of them, they see African Americans, not Haitians in particular. I'm just talking about like how Haitian youth tend to gravitate more towards African American culture. But these other Africans or other Caribbean blacks, they have a superiority complex. Haitians, I wouldn't say it's so much of a superiority complex because, Haiti's put down so often, and earthquakes and famine, and you can't grow crops, you've over processed the land and all that other stuff. So, they got some issues, and I talk about that when I talk about how when it comes to black people, if you come from a community or an environment that doesn't do for you, it can create a hell of an inferiority complex in you. So, God damn it, man. I'm like getting ready, so that's why I'm moving around and doing all this stuff. But the other thing, imagine me going to Nigeria or Sudan, and as an African American, I come up with a podcast and I start talking about how shitty, Sudanese women were. You think they would tolerate that shit? Right? You think they would tolerate it? I don't. It goes back to Rihanna and Nicki Minaj, talking crazy about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. This is where the foreign blacks get out of pocket. Completely out of pocket. But I don't think they would tolerate that shit. And first, it wouldn't even make sense for me to do that if I had a population of women that weren't belligerent and whatnot. I just don't get that. You got a home base. These are not your problems. You're going to go back and marry your own woman and get with your own woman anyway. Right? Like Nigerians or something like that. You'll have a Nigerian guy. He'll come to the West. He'll go to the UK. He'll go to America. He'll be running through a bunch of white women. But then when it comes to getting married, you know what I'm saying? He's going to marry his own people. He's probably, as soon as he starts creeping up around marriage age, he's going to start going to a whole bunch of Nigerian weddings, with the high water pants, no socks, penny loafers on, a turtleneck with a chain on the outside, and a blazer. That's exactly what a Nigerian is going to do. He's going to go to a couple weddings. He's going to, pull a woman from his community. And that's what they're going to marry, because they actually have a community. They I bring this up all the time when it comes to, marriage is an institution. It's not just about, getting with somebody because you're physically attracted to them. There's a whole structure in place. Now, women may not like that. They're like, no, I want you to recognize me for my beauty and get with me because you're thirsty and wild and crazy about me. Personally, I think that's only generally an African American concept because, we think like that because we don't have anything else to base it off of, marriage. So that's why, colorism and featureism and, all these other things and black men stepping out, end up becoming a problem. And then you start hearing things like, what do I need a black woman for? Or what do I need a black man for? These are problems that we have as African Americans. Other groups don't have that problem. So, I'm like, yo, I can't I can't understand why you're in the conversation. I mean, if I was Sudanese or Ghanaian or you know, some other Caribbean black or something like that, and I had a pool of women to go back to, man, I'd be the most arrogant, shit talking, foreign black person ever. I'm like, I'd be running around like that's not my problem. You know, maybe if you African Americans controlled your women, you know, do not date the Akata, right? You know, our women, we know how to control our women. You know what I mean? I'd be talking stupid shit because I didn't have that problem. Like, I mean, where is this? I mean, when African American men say they're gonna, if they want a black woman, they're trying to get away from African American culture, which is brought about by prolonged exposure to poverty and belief systems and wrong orientation, and largely the fact that, you know, we live and operate in another man's system. For Africans, they come here with their own culture, language, hierarchies, orientations, belief systems, history, you know, all that. We don't come, I mean, you know, we're a homeless people, basically. Isn't that what an akata is? A stray cat? You know? We don't have a home base. So, you know, I'm just like, if you got a bunch of cooperative women and you're just making general statements about how you're not interested, that sounds like self-hate to me. Because I'm like, what other reason do you have to reject your women? Like, explain that. What other reason do you have other than self-hate? If I'm a Sudanese guy, right, like, what are African American men looking for? Feminine, fit, cooperative, right, submissive, right? That's what African American men are looking for. And it's not like any of these foreign blacks don't have that in their own countries. They do. So, and then on top of that, again, they think they're superior to African Americans, and they wouldn't marry an African American woman to begin with. So why are you commenting on a group of women that you wouldn't get with to begin with? And you got a population of, you know, feminine, fit, submissive, cooperative women to go off and be with. It doesn't make any sense. Other than, hey, I'm trying to make a quick dollar off of the gender war because of the monetization. And, you know, I like how Uneku put it, you know, this sort of low-key dissing, you know, of African Americans. That's what I pick up on. Because I'm like, there ain't really any, I'm not saying that they, you know, foreign blacks can't be in the conversation. Yeah, if you're a foreign black and you know, running around and you dated nothing but African American women and you thought that, you know, that was the pool that you could pick from, fine. But many of these guys, they already believe or already think or already look at it like, I'm not getting with no African American women. They already look at the situation like that. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, they already look at the situation like that. So, I'm like, why are you talking about a group of women that were never on your radar to begin with in terms of marriage? I'm not a night rider. You weren't an African American rider, you know, way before it had anything to do with them being ratchet. And again, if you have your own, if you have your own intact community, then it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. You just go and you pick from the pool that you were going to pick from and marry in the first place. But anyway, I gotta get ready to go. I might finish this video later. There's some other things I think I want to say, but I gotta run out the door. So that's my video. That's Williepete out.